The Guru couldn't have written all of the Charitra Upakyan, it could have been the court poets. But then we find that we have court poet work in Adi Granth, in Adi Guru Granth Sahib. So could it not be that we can still revere the Dasam Granth regardless of its authenticity, of whether Guru Gobind Singh wrote it, just by the fact that today as Sikhs it is present, if we go by the praxis, in many things that we do? Or it could be argued that no, again, these things have come from an oral tradition and the Dasam Granth itself didn't exist. But then how do we justify the fact that many thousands of copies of Dasam Granth exist in many museum libraries around the world and in Punjab? So we have many ways of looking at this conundrum of the authenticity. And ultimately, at the end of the paper that I gave at Coventry University, the main problem that the scholars had was about belief, which was, well, Guru Granth Sahib is the Guru. Why do we need another scripture there? How do we justify revering another scripture when we have one scripture? Well, if we look at the 10 Gurus as one jot, if the Guru writes something or dictates something, surely it's Gurbani. Surely the Khalsa Panth, the Sikh Panth, should give that reverence if that is the case. And from that, we have to look at the issue of doubt. Why is there doubt about scriptures? Where has this come from? And this is why I included the worldview into the scheme, because mythology, for people with a modern thinking or a scientific thinking, they'll think this mythology is rubbish. We don't need it. We don't require it. But what we are forgetting is the worldview the Guru was brought up in, the worldview the Guru lived in, and the wider India lived in. We have to contextualize the text itself. Further from this point, I wish to discuss worldview and allow a good friend of mine and a colleague of mine, Devinder Singh Panesar, to talk about this worldview, and hopefully that shall be in 2 parts.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Worldview, I think, is a topic in its own right. But I think before we go there would be one question I would like to ask. How do we justify, if someone was to say that, are we not bringing tradition back in? Yeah. So are we not in some way going back to practices which we have, which a large number of so-called Sikh scholars find particularly problematic, that we are adding this idea of tradition back in to our way of existence? What would be your response to that?
If we analyze this whole idea of tradition and how tradition flows, well, Singh Sabha itself is a tradition. It's come down generations, and before that the Namtaris were a tradition, and we can go back and we can say Buddha Dal was a tradition. But whether we have a modernistic, a modern view or a scientific view, these are all traditions. These are all learned and have come forwards. And what I'm trying to present on a scholaristic level, and to the Panth in general, is that we need to tackle this issue with logic. We need to tackle this issue in a pragmatic way, in a rational way, which might seem contradictory to my own thesis. But we need to have a look, well, if we are reading Jap Sahib, where is this reference? Where has it come from? If we are going to read Jaupe Sahib, where has it come from? If we have got this Gakar, where has it come from?
Yeah, if we do the Ardas as well, we find the Ardas too takes its origin from the Dasam Granth as well. And nothing is started or completed until an Ardas takes place. So it is almost like the bookshelves that contain our start and our end, and also the middle. So it's quite it's very essential. You can see that we have got parts of our wrath which are without doubt tied to the Dasam Granth. The second question I guess arises is, does this not create another confusion? And since the Singh Sabha tradition, let's call it, or one of the Singh Sabha traditions, because there were two, the dominant one today, do you not think that that is what's required in order for the Sikhs to have their worldview?
In reference to what we talked about before and this question, we can analyze it in two ways. If the Singh Sabha scholars or the modern scholars are putting forward a new worldview, then that new worldview, according to their own scientific methodology, should be legitimate. And how I mean by legitimate is, could they explain where the body from Chandi Divar, could they give a reference to where that came from, or the moment that came into the Panth? Could they give evidence, again to support the rational argumentation, that where Jap Sahib came from, where Chaupe Sahib came from, where Twar Prasad Swaya came from? Could they give scholars, could they give the general public and the Sangat evidence from where Shastra Prakash came from? Where did all these things come from? And could they give oral examination? Well, if it's not from scripture, could they engage us with a new theory of how orally it was transmitted down into the Panth? And then again, how did scholars like Khan Singh Nabha and other great scholars, why did they mention the Dasam Granth at all? So we find that the Dasam Granth again is traceable in history. And if this scripture is inauthentic, how did it get here? How did it work its way into the very psyche of being a Sikh? How did it work its way into the very practices and Amrit Sanchars that we do? If it wasn't real. If, which means that what these scholars are saying is that the Sikh tradition is inauthentic. They're actually attacking the very foundation of Sikh tradition, because they're saying all the Sikh tradition is inauthentic because these Baniya are not by Guru Gobind Singh. Because now we have scholars who are saying that Jap Sahib, Swaya and even Chaupe Sahib is not Guru Gobind Singh's Bani.
And I think that's a very worrying part. It's a very worrying part that how the tradition of a Sikh is being manipulated and has been manipulated, and the Singh Sabha played a very critical role, and they had to exist in order to address the forced conversions that were going on, the coercions and the grooming of Punjabis were going on towards Christianity, and the breakdown of all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. So we will try and bring our second part to this program over the next few weeks. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.